All right, all right. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Um, uh, well, you know what? Normally I do the whole countdown thing, but we're we're gonna. I guess we're gonna skip that this time. Uh, oh, there it is. All right. You know what? We'll do that. We'll do that another clip, or we'll do that later. Whatever. Anyway, so today's topic: why I packed my bags and left the DS behind. So I'm joined with Mr. Foreign Exchange, who's great influence on people, and he's a like-minded brother in several groups that I'm a part of that I follow, and somebody who I would definitely say is a role model for you other brothers who haven't gotten out the DS, and for those of you who might want to be getting out of the DS. So, oh, and DS is divided states. Just to clarify for those who may not know, the divided states because we don't see any unity. We don't. So then let's just keep it real with that. But that's so yeah. Neil or Mr. Foreign Exchange, tell us what's on your mind about that. What would you have to say about this topic?
My brother, I appreciate you. I would say on this topic, what you mentioned about DS is so true. And I can just tell you one thing. Earlier today I was watching a documentary on some guys that grew up in New York that were, professional ball players. And they're showing me neighborhoods that, I walk around a lot, neighborhoods that I grew up in. And in the 60s and 70s, I mean, it was an absolute bloodbath, in terms of racial division. And, while, we've made some strides, you can, like you just said, the whole DS, you can see the division all around. It's absolutely, insane. And it sucks that sometimes we get to a point where we're used to it and we think that this is all that life has to offer. Having to always, watch your back wherever you go, because of your skin color or different ideologies. But, when you travel, like when I was able to travel to Brazil for the first time, it really honestly opened my eyes in terms of, man, there is so much more out there. And this whole belief that, is just America, or what they say, God bless America and nowhere else. This sort of crazy patriotic pride. It's all bullshit.
Yep. Yep. Well, from my experience, having traveled around the world before the age of 30, and I've been to pretty much everywhere minus Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. I've been everywhere else, including I've lived in Asia for 3 years. So I've seen all of Asia and I've lived in Asia. I was almost fluent in Japanese, but it Japanese is a hard language and it's also very difficult because if you're not there and using it regularly, it's one of those languages that you lose like that because you can't just go to the Americas and speak Japanese with anybody. You have to, you'd have to either have a contact in Japan or meet people like Japanese people in the Americas, but especially here in Brazil, it's very very difficult to find just Japanese people like that are willing to sit down and have a conversation with you.
Right.
In the United States or in the divided states is how I call it. It's I guess a little bit easier because there's more Japanese people there, but it's still kind of difficult to just be like, hey, you Japanese person, want to sit down and have a conversation in Japanese? And they're like, I don't know you. Like, why would I want to sit down and talk to you? Like, about what? What is this about? Like, why? It's weird. But So it's not exactly something that you could just be like, hey, you Joe Schmo on the street, let's sit down and have a conversation. Which is another reason, because like here in Brazil, like you could talk to people and just be like, hey, yeah, like let's sit down and have coffee. Like I've known you for 10 years. Like I met you right now on the street, and we'll just sit down and have coffee and talk, and it's like no big deal. But in the DS, like people don't do that. They'll be like, "Yo, whoa, like I don't know if you're a narc. I don't know if you're 5-0. Like I don't know what your thing is. You might be trying to set me up for the okey doke. Like it's just like it's crazy, crazy, crazy. What was your experience? Have you ever had any kind of encounters like that, like in the DS, like where you had somebody be like, "Yo, like, whoa, back up, you too close," or like, "Oh, why are you talking to me?"
Oh, all the time. And I would say there were certain states where it wasn't necessarily as bad head on, but in New York, I mean, that's almost an everyday thing. Like I always tell people, you got to be really careful, who you come across, and if you're too close, it could be an entire issue. So I've definitely experienced that, and for the most part, I try to keep my distance unless, like, let's say I'm really lost. I might, ask somebody a question, but even then, you could tell their guards are up. Like, yeah, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're trying to set me up. So I'm just gonna be prepared, and you should keep some sort of distance.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, so as you see, I posted this.
Gotcha.
What would it take for people to pack up and leave the DS? And another question I have that I'm going to post after this, after we kind of touch on this, I'll post that also. But I can't post multiple banners at once, so I
Gotcha.
can only post one at a time. Anyway, so tell me, what do you think? What would it take for people to pack up and leave? Because for me, it was the lack of excuse me. It was the lack of friendliness, the constant violence, the fact that the culture is just not at all welcoming or friendly. Like they're like, like they have this um very like, gangster mentality. Like, it's good to be ignorant, and it's good to be the number one gunner on the street. Like, I'm a gunslinger. Yeah, I'll kill you in a minute. Yeah, you don't pop your mouth off to me, because I'll pop it real fast, quicker than you can say mama, or something like that. And so for all these, all these wackos and yahoos out there, trying to be the number one stunner. And for me, like, I prefer to be like left alone. I prefer to just, like, look, I'm on a different vibe. I'm traveling. I'm out here meeting people. I'm out here networking, trying to build an empire, but on a different type of tip. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
what do you think? What would it take?
Um, it'll definitely take a number of things. I know people, they generally want to see, for example, how far their money can go somewhere. That's typically one of the criteria, because, like, in the States, everybody's working, working, working to achieve this American dream.
Yeah,
But,
right.
right, but they
You gotta
realize,
be asleep to realize it. That's the thing. You gotta be asleep to realize the American dream.
right. They realize when they get up, they're nowhere closer today than they were maybe like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yup.
So
Yup.
it's like the carrot keeps being dangled, and they're not getting any closer. So if they could live better somewhere else than the way they live here, and really have peace of mind and things like you mentioned, where there's this sense of community. People, when you talk to them, it's not this sort of standoffish vibe. Oh, a lot of people would get up and go. Honestly, I believe it. I believe they'll get up and go if they believe that there was a better way to live somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Um. Now let me go ahead and I'm gonna post another different banner here. But go ahead and tell me, what do you think about what do you think about like the food quality? What do you think about the culture? Like, do you think that the culture of Brazil versus the culture of the United States or the DS? Do you what do you think about that? Like, what are the contributing factors that would make you personally say like, yo, you know what, this is for the birds. I'm out.
Gotcha. So for me, I would definitely say it's a number of things. So you actually just mentioned a few. So for example, food quality. It's like night and day. In the States, we have the garbage of the garbage. Whatever can be produced real fast. Who knows what the process was? It's just how it goes. 1 second. Give me 1 second, my brother. Where did I go? Yeah, give me one quick second. Let me quickly put my phone on mute.
All right. So while he's doing that, so I basically want to touch on just like one thing is that it, it's it's very very different when you come to Brazil. When you get out of the United States, you may not necessarily like the vibe of Brazil. Brazil is not for everybody. I will say that. That is a PS, like little side note. Brazil is not for everybody. Brazil can be too expensive. Brazil can be a bad vibe. It can rub you the wrong way. The food may not be agreeable to you. For me and for Mr. Foreign Exchange, it is agreeable to us. And I've been living here for 3 years now. I'm fluent in Portuguese, and I love it here. Next year, I'm planning on actually getting married to my Brazilian, and yeah, yeah, it's a long time coming, man. For real, for real. But um, and I honestly I think it's a better standard, a better quality of life because Brazil, like, and anywhere outside of the DS, honestly, like their mindset, it's all about the mindset because if you look and you see in the DS, it's all about your mind. They want you. They run fear campaigns. They run political ads that don't have anything to do with the candidate that they want you to vote for. They tell you all about the candidate that you shouldn't vote for. So there's no reason to vote for A. There's a reason why you should vote against B, which by default means you should vote for A. But assuming that there's no C, right? So if they tell you to vote for A, or if they say don't vote for A, vote for B. You know what I mean? Assuming that there's no C, then you by default are voting for A. But anyway, the point is that it's a war of attrition basically. Like they want your mind, and if you're weak-minded and you fall into the trap, you could find yourself in a disastrous relationship, like or a marriage. It may not necessarily be a marriage, it may be just a dating relationship, but it's a disaster. You could find yourself in financial hardships that you will never get out of. You could find yourself in medical issues. Like there's all kinds of problems with medicine there. Did you know that cancer patients are given very very old forms if you get cancer in the United States or the DS and excuse me, I've got hiccups now. If you get cancer and you're giving chemotherapy actually is a, so to speak, updated and so to speak newer form of the 1950s mustard gas, because that's really where it came from. That's what they did. In the 1950s they experimented on actual human beings with mustard gas, and that's where they came up with chemotherapy.
Gotcha.
So, and that is verified. You can look that up. I'm not talking off the rip here, just making stuff up. That's the real deal. And along with all of these other campaigns like the Tuskegee experiment, where they basically injected like 50 African Americans with syphilis and just watched them slowly but surely agonizingly die they didn't give them any help. I mean, the point was to see what the symptoms would be and how the quality of life is drastically diminished from the time of injection to the point of death. What symptoms do you get? How bad does it get? And where do it, what, like, how low can you possibly go is like literally the objective with that experiment. And which is another reason why these vaccines I'm very, very doubtful about. And it's a very dubious thing. But anyway, the point is that outside of the United States, you see that it's the mindset. Their mindset isn't screwed like completely, and for lack of not saying curse words here, but I mean like their mindset is not like not gone like the way it is in the DS, because you got people that are like, oh yeah, it's I don't know what 2 + 2 is, but I'll bang on you, I'll stun on you, yeah, 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 you know, and like, my God, like, yo, what? You don't know what 2 + 2 is, like, and it may not be so simple. Like, you may not be talking about something so simple because, of course, the average, relatively basic functioning person knows what 2 + 2 is, but yet there are still some people. But I mean, like, if you have ever seen those videos, like where Jay Leno goes around and says, like, you know, tell me where's Africa, and people will be like, Asia, and you just be like, tell me you're kidding, right? Tell me you're kidding. And they're like, you know, and people would just be like, no, I'm serious. Like, it's in Asia, right? You just okay. Let's just wah, wah, wah.
Oh man.
So I mean, just like that's just for me. That's my observation. So you can go ahead and continue. Tell me about your observation. I was just kind of trying to fill in the gap there while you were taking care of business over there.
Gotcha. So, like I said, I know you touched on, and that was a good thing you mentioned. You know, for Brazil may not be for everybody in terms of you were saying. You know, you and I like the food. You and I like it there. Other people, they may find other places that they like.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah, but the real point is to go out and explore, because I've come across individuals that have told me they fell into the whole mantra of, oh, what else is there to see out there? It's all about New York. New York is the place to be. Everybody, all these tourists want to come visit New York. So why should I leave? New York.
Yeah.
And when they finally go out and travel, they're just like, what? The rest of the world is so different. New York is like so much stress, always fast paced for no reason.
Yeah.
You get up in the morning to evening, you're doing the hamster run just all over the place, just to do it again every single week, And the one thing that I truly appreciated about being in Brazil was, even seeing, for example, when you would go out to eat, the quality of the food, even the fact that you weren't being rushed, you could literally sit there, have discussions, eat, joke, laugh, enjoy each other's companies. Even the individuals serving there, they were just a lot more pleasant than on this, in the DS, where it's just like, all right, you got your food, your time is almost up, and just keep it pushing. So, definitely for me, that the cost of living was just so much better. And honestly, the interactions with people, the scenery, the air quality, it was ridiculously. It was just night and day. I came back here and I'm like, what is this? Am I back in smog? Like, this is
smog. Prop 65 sign. Prop 65.
Right. It's like, what am I living in? Like, this is absolutely, ridiculous. So I came back and like my eyes were wide open. I'm just like, yeah, this is not it. But each person's gonna have to figure out for themselves. But this is not where it's at.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Eh, there's a lot to unpack with this idea, but like I said, for me, basically, it was a lack of culture and a lack of education, a lack of desire to be better, and imperialism.
Mm.
Plus, I mean, there's other reasons which we're going to get into in a few minutes, but um, those were basically like the biggest ones. I mean, let's think about this here. If according to Michelle Alexander, who wrote the book The New Jim Crow, which I highly recommend for you guys to check out, and you too, Mr. Foreign Exchange. The New Jim Crow. It's actually available on YouTube for free. You can get the first 6 chapters as an ebook. Um, and it's all pure truth, and it's all about how mass incarceration has become the new Jim Crow. And so, I mean, for me personally, like, I'm not trying to be a statistic. I'm also not trying like a statistic of another hashtag another black man dead, or hashtag another black man locked up, or another what these modern day feminists are calling just another useless dude, like a waste of space or whatever, because as we all know, feminism came to destroy the family home and to destroy the black family. But that's neither here nor there. But I mean, it's just there's infinite reasons. Like if you look at all of the relationships that people have in the DS, the quality is greatly diminished from back in like the 40s and 50s, and what relationships were and what they could have been, to what they are now and what they never will be again. Never ever will be again. Like, consider that in the 40s and 50s, even as late as the 60s, early 70s, I would venture to say that it was possible to find a woman and to be happy with her, to more or less buy your house. I mean, you had to have at least a little something. You couldn't be totally impoverished, but a little something. You didn't have to be wealthy like now, and you could more or less buy your own house and start a family and have one breadwinner. The husband could go to work 40 hours a week, and come home and be straight. The family could be straight. Now, with the influence of feminism and with these third wave feminists, you've also got, and I like what Candace Owens says about that with third wave feminism. Check her out also. I recommend Candace Owens. She's a real one too. Um, but what you've got now is that this idea that men don't serve for anything. Women should not be having children. Women should be married to their job, and they should have a career. And so there's no more babies. Nobody's procreating, right? And people should basically be okay with being in the rat race. And that to me is just unacceptable. That's an unacceptable solution to life, because life is much more than just work and sleep and work and sleep. You don't even get laid. I mean, come on. How bad do you have to be?
Right.
Some of the most valuable, I mean, of course at the time they weren't given any value, but nowadays when you look back, some of the most valuable quotes that we have from the Indian chiefs back in like the 1800s, when we did like the March of Tears, when the DS did the March of Tears against them, and when they basically took over their lands and basically just said, this is our land now. Our land. Yes, you go away. Our land. Now we take keys. Now. And of course, the Native Americans, they didn't really understand this concept, because they believed that the land belonged to everybody and the Great Spirit. And so when they wrote quotes about, all of what was happening to them and the injustices and the travesties, you know what they said? They said, only the, and this is a quote, I'm not making this up, this is what they said, only the white man would come in and take away an opportunity for a man to have work, sex, and good food, and not and basically live the good life, so that then he could work too hard, not have sex, and not have good food. Only the white man would come in and do something like that. And as if you look back and you look at history and you see, you kind of, and not trying to be racist to any white people who may be watching this, but if you think about this, America, or the DS, has prided itself on the idea that we are a white nation. We are not the African nation. We don't want anything to do with the African nations. And actually, I was just watching a film about the destruction by France, specifically France and Europe, but also by the DS, and they destroyed Haiti, and how like their whole, basically like how everything happened in Haiti. I basically watched like a timeline of it from like the middle 1700s all the way until now, and it was completely like just wow, unbelievable. Like, and it's sad, like you almost cry when you think about it, how bad that they treated Haiti. And so I mean, like I said, this just reinforces all of what I've just said so far. It's just the mindset and thinking about, like, their what is their goal? What is their goal? They have accomplished nothing other than to exactly as the Native Americans have said, that it's been them, the white man, who has come in and destroyed everything so that then people could be quote unquote subservient to them. I don't see how anybody of any kind of color could want to be in a system like that. Like, why would you want to say, hey, yeah, let's leave where we're free and where we have opportunities, maybe not the most opportunities because of colonization and because of global dominance, but we have opportunities. There are things that we can do. We have the internet now. We're not totally just, up the creek without a paddle. And so why leave your country to go to a place that doesn't want you and that has prided itself on saying that you are not welcome?
Right.
So let me not lecture here. Go ahead and you say something too. Like, this is a conversation.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, you mentioned some really good points. Even on just like the imperialistic, view, or even how in the U.S. there is this, even the way our history books are written, right? It would so much is omitted, and it would almost, forget about saying almost, it is literally put in a way where it is whitewashed. Everything, it makes you look at, George Washington, all these presidents in such a beautiful picture, like they're like this savior.
Yeah.
And that, they were for everybody, when indeed, they owned many slaves, but they won't talk about that in history. So, that was one thing for me, growing up in the DS. And as I got older, I was just like, man, this is just such a this is just crazy how they try to preach to you part of the doctrine, and then have you say your Pledge of Allegiance, and act as if everything was fine for everybody, when indeed there is minorities in general have suffered in the States. And what you mentioned about the incarceration, our jail system, it's absolutely crazy. It's literally an industry in and of itself now, where they're getting all of this free to cheap labor, aka slavery, and they're producing tons of products, and they don't have to pay the people, and it's their new form of the slavery of old.
Yeah. Well, let's look at some facts here. The United States has 1/4 the population of China, and they make up 25% of the. Sorry, let me rephrase that. 25% or 1/4 of the population of China, but they have 3/4 of the population in jail or have been to jail.
Right.
So how is that? How is that the land of the free? And how would that make somebody say, "Gee, that's a great place to go"? That to me, that seems like that's the craziness. That is what you call complete low. Well, there's really no other way to say it. Like you couldn't even just say crazy, because crazy, like in English, doesn't do it justice. Like there's just no feeling behind that idea. Like when you say that's crazy, like there's no feeling behind that. You have to say it's locura, it's idiotka, idiocy. It's idiocy. Like it's so gone of rational, normal thought that you just like. But anyway, let's move on. The next part. So, considering that police brutality has been huge in these last 15 years, 20 years, perhaps even more, but let's say it's been especially brought to light and especially focused on these last 10, 15 years. Would police brutality play a factor in a mass exodus?
I think it would. But here's always the interesting thing. So I know people always try to look at, like, you have two sides, right? Anytime something happens with the police, oh, but was the person at fault? Did the person try and resist? There's those two train of thoughts. That side and the side is just like, no, the police, they they have other measures to stop the individual versus just going to lethal force. So I could see those that are already on the fence, or may have children, or may be part of the group that is more susceptible to brutality from police. I could see those individuals being ready to just open the exits, because it'll be like a life or death scenario. So I could see it. I mean, I still know that there are some that they'll say that something had to be wrong with that person. Did they sell drugs? Or were they drinking? Maybe but they try to always find something to justify why the person had to be killed worse than most animals are hunted.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and let me interject something. I'll let you get back to it in a second, but let me interject. Is that there is this whole concept that the mindset of the justice system, or just the way that the system in general, not necessarily just the justice system, but the system in general, the way it works is to blame the victim. Like a woman is raped, and instead of believing her or agreeing with her until there's sufficient evidence to prove that she lied, or that she might not be credible, or that that the guy is completely innocent, or whatever, or maybe he's completely at fault, maybe she's telling the 100% truth, but they believe the guy before they believe the victim, the girl. You know what I mean? I mean, it might be a guy. There are cases of men being raped. You know what I mean? And most men, because of the fact that they don't want to come out and say, like, I was raped, because that would make me look weak and effeminate and whatever and ever. But there are cases of, pedophiles who prefer little boys rather than little girls. Yeah. And, or there are people who maybe not necessarily pedophiles. It may not even be an instance of pedophilia. It may be adult on adult, but it's still man versus man against his will. You know what I mean? So the mindset, as I was saying, is that they have this tendency to blame the victim and to say like, well, you had to have been doing something. It has to be your fault. They wouldn't just walk up to you out of the blue and just say, hey, you get on your knees and start doing this with me. Or, hey, just take your pants off and let me give it to you out in the back. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't work like that. And that's
Right.
what people think, but they don't understand this is the sickness. This is the illness that the society is in the DS. Like there is you're trying to come from a normal mindset and you're dealing with somebody else who is sick. You know what I mean? Like so it's like a normal person trying to rationalize the behavior of a sick person.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so continue. I just wanted to interject that.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, that was a really good point. So I know, definitely you'll find those that will. There are those they already have mounting reasons to leave. They're just waiting for that one more thing to, get them, out of the country. But definitely this is at the front and center. Nobody wants to think that they could be next. For so some sort of brutality from law enforcement, and you hear cases where you have individuals where they don't fit a profile that the public might say, oh, you know what, that person looks like they might have been looking for trouble. Could be somebody that's real professional, has a good job, professional. Even when the cops stop them, they should be the ones worried because the cops have the guns. They're telling the cops, hey, listen, I have something in the back that I'm going to get. Or they might say, hey, listen, I'm a licensed gun owner. I have my gun on me, explaining everything, and they still get shot. So
Yep.
you'll have those. This will be the final straw. They'll pack their bags and they'll leave. So I could see it having a lot of people, think deeper, because I know even with the pandemic, a lot of people, they started really thinking about their life because it was such a pause, right?
Yeah.
So they started to realize, man, there's more to life than just get up, work, enjoy maybe a tiny bit of my weekend, sleep, and then do the same thing every weekday, and then I get 2 weeks off in the year. They realize they want to see the world. They realize that there's other places that they can live and be better off. So, that factor plus this one being a massive factor, like you said, the last 10 to 15 years, this has been that reoccurring theme that is just, it has people just worried.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not an easy subject to tackle, and like thinking about what exactly what would a mass exodus look like of Black and Latino and maybe perhaps Asians, perhaps, but most of the time the Asians kind of get the pass because they tend to be more favored. They tend to favor more towards white people, and they prefer to kind of like be mingling amongst white people. But I mean, perhaps those who are awake enough and who realize, like, hey, yeah, like the incarceration of Chinese people, the Japanese internment camps during World War II. Hey, yeah, like these weren't the greatest of times for Asian people. Like there was, I forget the exact uh, information. I should have researched this before, but there was basically like a prejudice or like a bias against Chinese people, and it was almost like they were treated like black people. I mean, almost not quite as bad, but almost. Like basically like, oh, you want to eat something? Sure, no problem. Go around back and get it from the back because we don't serve your kind to the front. Or oh, you like the cartoons they had, many different cartoons back in the day where they had people who were like making fun of Asian people with their slanted eyes, and they would be like, oh, my name is Mr. Wong.
I remember
Oh,
that. I remember
blah, blah,
that.
blah, blah. And like that, that kind of those kind of stereotypes. And so it's not how can I say this? It's just like for me, it's like it's just reason on reason on reason on reason on reason on reason on reason. Like and eventually you have to say, okay, where's the line? Like, what's the straw that broke the camel's back? Like, you know what I mean? There just doesn't seem to be a line for people because they'll just keep on taking and keep on taking and keep on taking and be like, we're going to get better, we're going to get better, this is going to get, and they'll be going to prayer meetings, they'll go to rallies, they'll go to this, and they'll be in the streets and say, we want justice, da, da, da. But like, at what point do you realize, like, there is no justice? You will not see the day when they say, we apologize for slavery and we will give you reparations, or we will at least try to do something that perhaps is meaningful to your community. There may not at this point be anything that's meaningful that they could do to the community. But, I mean, just an admission of guilt and an apology would be like, whew, that would be like, I don't know, like unheard of. Like, that'd be mind blowing if they ever did something like that, because the government has decided, the government of the United States has decided that it's impossible, that they will never ever ever apologize and say they apologized to the Jews, but they didn't really do anything to the Jews, but they basically, like, they had their thing, like, where it was prejudice, like, not anything like 400 years, but they had their prejudice against the Jews during World War II. They apologized to them. The Chinese and the Japanese, they apologized to them. The Native Americans, they apologized to them. What about black people? They're no.
Apollo who? No, we don't do that.
yeah, exactly. Apollo, no, that's not the wrong place. Yeah, that's down the street. You go talk to Sonny. And so, I mean, at what point do we say, hey, you know what? That's fine. It's not fine, but you know what? Like, cool. You're gonna do that. You're gonna be that way. Then I'm out. Like, this is what broke the camel's back. This particular instance, or that instance, or I realized after da 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 da, and it just, I don't know. I'm very, very, very vocal about these kind of things, and I just don't see how somebody could keep on just, like, somebody's punching you in the face, and it's just like, 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 at what point do you say, okay, enough?
Right.
But
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, that's something that is, it weighs heavily on my heart, and I just, for me, I can't sit back and take it. Like, I just can't. It's just not in my nature.
Gotcha.
So anyway, let's move on. Oh, snap. What happened here? I had a second one, but I had another banner I was going to put up. But okay, let me write it here.
Sure.
Okay. So with this Black Exodus, like, thinking about that, what would be the best way for somebody to bring their money to Brazil, or to bring their money to another country overseas? Say, for example, they went to Africa, because Ghana is currently offering citizenship and basically the equivalent of 40 acres on a mule for any Black Americans that want to expatriate and move out of the country to Ghana.
Hmm. What's the best way to travel? So you're just talking about the Ghana situation or in general? Best way to transfer your money overseas?
Well, the idea is like economics, right? So we realized over the past 10 years, maybe a little bit more, I'd say probably since the arrival of Bitcoin and these various cryptocurrencies, I would say people started really like realizing like that economics and money really plays a factor in society. Like it's not necessarily just your voting or your which voting is rigged anyway, but it's not really just like that kind of thing. It's really much more about the economics, and the economics really makes a high. It punches a lot harder than somebody who demonstrates, or somebody who says like, "Oh, I'm gonna try to beat you in a fist fight or something like that." You know what I mean? Like when if you really want to hurt somebody or hurt something like an establishment, you hurt them financially because that's what really counts.
Right.
And so we realized that over this last I don't know, 10, 10, 12, something like that years. So it's basically the beginning of Bitcoin and these cryptocurrencies. So I what I'm basically trying to get to is like, transferring your wealth, transferring your money, because that's basically like your power. So transferring that from the DS to overseas, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that. That's a good question. I personally don't know the best way at the moment. Who knows? Maybe it might be through cryptocurrencies. Like I said, I'm at this moment not completely sure. So yeah, that is still a question for me. I found some more efficient ways than like my first trip to Brazil, but overall, I at this current moment don't know the best way.
Well, would you say like wallets are good, or would you recommend just somebody to basically just pull out all their money from the DS bank account to say, I'm closing my bank account. I want all my money right now. Give me everything. And I'm going to take a cash value or a check or something, go down to Brazil or go to some other place and open up a bank account there and be like, look, I got 600,000 in US dollars. I need to put this into an account somewhere.
Well, I would tell the individual don't pull out everything at once. I would say take out a certain amount, um, especially if they do plan to go back to the U.S. from time to time, even if they don't. To be able to have both currencies doesn't hurt them. You can move as much as you want to, let's say, that foreign country, such as Brazil or wherever else you're going. But definitely don't pull it all at once. I wouldn't suggest that unless you know for certain that your country, the country that you currently have your currency in, is about to go through the worst economic downturn in history. Then by all means, take all your money and run. That I would say.
Okay. So basically, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I mean, just because of the fluctuations in currency. Like I said, if somebody notices one currency is becoming a lot stronger than the other, you can always adjust and put more in that currency. But just play the currency differences, since like all these countries like to play that game anyway. Just play the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it also doesn't hurt to do a little research. People need to learn how to do a little research, which is once again talking about the mindset. Because, like, when I was in college, there were Brazilians that were teaching Americans. They didn't have to teach me. I was not a part of that crowd, but they did have to. They were Brazilians that were in my class with me, and this was what class was this? I'm trying to remember what class that I was in. I think it was a philosophy class, something like that. And basically, these Brazilians were teaching Americans about American history because these people were so uneducated. They were like, the Civil War ended in 1870? Yeah. And and they're like, yeah, I got that right. Yeah, I got totally got that right. Nailed it.
That
And you're like, yep. That's yep. Good job. Good job.
that's that's funny. Now that's funny.
So you have Brazilians teaching Americans American history because they're so poorly educated. And I don't know, like people say it's the lack of education, on the individual's part. They're just ignorant of their own will, or it could be the school system where another thing I experienced, my personal experience, was that I was having trouble in school when I was younger, because of learning disorders that I have. And the one of the teachers at the school told my mom, because my mom said, well, what happens if he doesn't pass, if
Right,
he fails the grade, if he fails the semester or whatever,
right.
seventh grade, eighth grade, whatever, if he fails, what happens? And they said, oh, don't worry, we'll just keep passing him. And the
Really?
lady literally looked my mom in the face, and I was there, I heard her, and she said, oh, don't worry, we'll just pass him along, don't worry, he'll pass, he'll be okay.
Wow.
And as I was in school, I met people. I was in high school at the time, and I met people. This is a little bit before that experience in college, obviously, that right. But I met people in this high school, and they couldn't read. They were supposed to be sophomores, juniors, and
Right.
they couldn't read.
Oh,
They literally couldn't read. Like they had to be put in special reading classes,
wow.
and that's and what's really sad is that the majority of them were all African American. The
Wow.
majority of them. There was like maybe one Hispanic, nobody who was Asian. There were no Asians, maybe one Hispanic,
Right.
and no white people. No white people at all to be found.
Wow.
So yeah, it was all black. So for me, like I didn't even need to go to the inner city. Like I could just see, like I was in the burbs and I could see that, like, you know what I mean? Like I could see that kind of like attitude, and I was just like, yo, this is for the birds, bro.
Right. Right. Right.
Whoa, what?
Wow.
But getting back on topic, like the best way to transfer your money, like I don't know, man. I think wallets would be good, but I don't know because I watch a lot of Peter Skiff, right? Peter Skiff or Peter Schiff, something like that.
Uh,
And if you pay any attention to what he says, he basically is saying that the Fed is the problem, and cryptocurrency is a bubble. He said, "Don't get involved in cryptocurrency, and don't be mad at the 1%. Be mad at the establishment. The establishment is the problem," which I would agree with to a certain point. But kind of in keeping with all of this, then I kind of think, well, so then what's the solution? If we're supposed to not get involved in cryptocurrency and we're supposed to be mad at the Fed, then what are we supposed to do? What exactly is the solution? Because the Fed is the one that prints all the paper that's the currency, and so I mean, basically, like if you're making your money
sure.
in any kind of way, it's coming from the Fed. So you're basically supposed to bite the hand that's feeding you. Like what? What?
Yeah. It's a. I would say this. Cryptocurrency among the 1% is actually very interesting because even they themselves, they're divided on it. You have some of the ultra wealthy that endorse cryptocurrency, and then you have some of the guys who are there, like some of the tech ultra wealthy, they endorse cryptocurrency. Some of the ultra wealthy traditional guys who things worked a certain way for them. history for them just kind of repeats itself. These new things, they come along, but they never really materialize. I notice a lot of them, they are a little bit more skeptical about cryptocurrencies. So even among themselves, there's a great divide. You'll hear some people that will tell you cryptocurrencies may soon replace gold as some sort of hedge against, problems in somebody's economy at some point in time. Now, do I believe that? It remains to be seen. I mean, right now, as we're talking, cryptocurrencies, they proved how volatile they can be. I mean, most people are hurting right now. But,
Yeah.
2-3 years down the line, I mean, it could be different. I thought Bitcoin personally was done when it cracked in late 2017, early 2018. And then here it comes back 2020. It does a wild run up to levels not seen, goes to new levels this year. And even with its big crack, it's still higher than where it was in 2017. So I'm going to kind of wait to see what happens, just because I was wrong on Bitcoin once. And definitely the people are behind these things. But, as far as crypto goes, I won't be quick to push it to the side, but I'll definitely keep a close watch on it. That's my best thing when it comes to crypto.
Okay. And what's your opinion on fiat currency? Do you think that fiat currency is really going to come to an end, or do you think that fiat currency will never end? It will just that's just a conspiracy theory.
I think there might have to be a war for it to end. I have a hard time believing the powers that be. As long as they have power, I don't see them just giving that up. And I already heard one of I think the former Fed was like, I'm tired of people bringing this topic up. This is here. It's been here it's not going anywhere. So something radical would have to happen to our economies, our world, for that to happen. And I personally don't see it, but I mean, I'm just one person. Anything can happen, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole point of this is to have control, right? And so if money is power and power is control, then basically limiting the amount of money to certain people, like how they have in India with caste groups and stuff like that.
Right.
Then, I mean, the way I think about it, it would be to their advantage to end fiat currency, because they could basically create like a one world government, one world currency, and only the wealthy of the wealthy, the rich of the rich would have it, or the people who are quote unquote in the boys club.
True. That is a good way of looking at it. I mean, listen, it's a possibility. I do know that they still like this idea of being able to print, when necessary, to make it seem as if they're saving people. So I'm not so sure how that, getting away from that, allows them to still do that. Like, I feel like even with the dollars, like, hey, when a crisis happens, we'll just print an infinite amount of dollars. And we'll just pull it, like a magic trick. Even though we all know what that does, but they love that whole narrative of, don't worry, guys, we'll save you. We'll print all these dollars. Things will be fine. So if they don't have, and I feel like for them, they feel like that's power. In the short term, who cares about inflation? Who cares if this gallon of milk, doubles in price, right? But I'm just like, no, we saved you guys in your toughest hour, so pledge your allegiance to us. So, like I said, it's interesting. I'm curious. If they were to get away from it, I'd be highly interested to see what they put in place. Just because there's always something with them, the powers that be, in order for them to, remain dominant and, like you said, have control over everything around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I don't know. Me personally, if what I did was I just basically said I'm gonna I'm gonna leave my money in dollars in the DS, and I'm just gonna spend it all here. Whenever I run out of dollars, then I run out of dollars. But as far as I can spend it, I'm gonna spend it
Got
here in Brazil. And so that's what I did. I just basically said, okay, I've got 10K in the bank. I'm gonna go ahead and that gives me multiplied by, well, at the time when I came down here was 3 years ago, so it was only like three. The exchange rate was only three and some change.
gotcha,
So it was like 350 more or less. So
gotcha.
it was still pretty decent, but I mean, it got way better when it went to four, and now it's at five, and it almost broke six once. But
Right.
um, what that's dependent upon what's going to happen with the Brazilian central bank and all of that. But when I got down here and I had 10K, and so it was multiplied by three, so it was like 30K, and so I just basically just went living life, paying my rent, paying my electric bill and all of that, and living life, but a little bit at a third of the cost, basically. My electric bill in 2018, when I got down here, I got here on March 7th, 2018. And shortly after, when I was in my apartment and I was, paying my electric bill and my rent and all that, my rent was 500 reais and my electric bill was 55 reais about. So my electric bill was between 17 and $19 for the whole month. And my rent was something like 150, maybe 200, or maybe a little bit. I might not be quite doing that right, but it was something like that. Um, it was very, very cheap. It was like 200, maybe 150, something like that, per month. And so I mean, like, life was life was much better, much better live excuse me, living here, on the dollar while I had it until I ran out.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I believe it. I definitely do believe that.
But that's what it is. That's basically like my story. Why I packed my bags and left the DS behind.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I hope
And
I'll be joining you soon, my brother. I hope to
yes,
join you.
yes, you will. I know you will. I look forward to having you down here. We're gonna rock and roll. We're gonna rock and roll. But yeah, man. So that's it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your conversation. We'll leave it here. Uh, an hour and 4 minutes, pretty much.
Gotcha.
So, guys, if you haven't liked or shared or commented, please like, share, and comment. Be sure to do you do you have a Instagram, or do you have a YouTube or anything that they can follow you?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram. It should be the same as the way I have. They can see my name listed, right? In the video. I'm sure they can.
Should be.
Sure, so it should be
Let
the
me
same.
go ahead, and I'm gonna post a comment here. So what's your? It's Mr. Foreign Exchange, right?
Yep, that should be it.
Mr. underscore. All right. No, no. There's no numbers or anything. It's just Mr. Foreign Exchange.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
So that's I posted that in the comment section here, guys. So you can go ahead and follow him, and real cool brother. Hit him up on the gram if you have any questions, or you can feel free to hit me up. My gram is let's see here. Uh, All right, so I posted mine there too. The best you ever had, 87. So you can go ahead and like and comment and share, and feel free to hit me up on the gram. All right, guys. All right, that's it, man. We are out.
Appreciate you, bro.
The microphone. Done. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Peace.